What's going on, everybody? It's Fade Stats, and in this video, I will be giving out my NBA awards. Starting off with Coach of the Year, I know Coach of the Year has already been released, but I still have Mike Brown. This one's pretty simple. Mike Brown completely changed the culture of the Sacramento Kings. He took them from winning 30 games last year to 48 this year, and it's their first time making the playoffs in 16 years, and they're doing it as a third seed. I think it's safe to say Mike Brown has had a pretty big impact on this team, and they're looking to make some noise in the playoffs as they take on the Golden State Warriors in the first round. The next award that has already been given out is Rookie of the Year, and I also have Paolo Banchero. Now, despite me being a Thunder fan and really loving J-Dub, Jalen Williams, I still had to go with Paolo. And the reason being is he was playing a bigger role on a worse team. And that does stun his numbers a little bit. But regardless, he's still a very good player despite the deficiency compared to Jalen Williams. But these two guys played a completely different role separate from each other. And I think if the roles were reversed, they'd probably have similar stats. But shout out to the Salt Lake City reporter who ruined Paolo's unanimous Rookie of the Year, as the Salt Lake City reporter voted Walker Kessler. Yes, you heard that right. Moving on to the Sixth Man of the Year, this one's pretty simple. I had to go with Malcolm Brogdon. When you watch the Celtics play, they have added a player who can really make an impact off the bench, every night, and he is a big reason to the Celtics' success this year. Now, when you look at it, you could say Immanuel Quickley, but Immanuel Quickley did have some of his most biggest games as a starter, and Malcolm Brogdon has been very consistent coming off the bench all year long. And yeah, my Sixth Man of the Year is Malcolm Brogdon. Moving on to the Most Improved Player, this one was also pretty easy, as I have Lauri Markkanen. He has had a major jump this year, going from just 14 points per game last season to 25 points per game this year. And he is also up from rebounds, going from 5 rebounds per game last year to 8 rebounds per game this year. He's also having his most efficient season shooting the ball, and he was able to bring his three-point percentage up from 35% last year to almost 40% this year, which is a drastically good increase from 3. He and the Utah Jazz shocked the NBA. He and the Utah Jazz shocked the NBA world this year, as they were considered to be tanking this season, but they fought all the way to the end, only being eliminated from play-in contention with just 3 games left in the season. Lauri was also able to make it to his first All-Star game this year, putting on for his city in Salt Lake. Now, moving on to Defensive Player of the Year, I have Jaren Jackson Jr. He's averaging a career high in blocks per game with 3 blocks per game this year, which has only been done by the likes of Mark Eaton, Manute Ball, and Hakeem Olajuwon. He also had a game this year where he had a career high in blocks in a game with 8 blocks in 1 game. Overall, when Jaren is on the court, you can see his impact, as teams tend to not go to the rim as much when he is on the floor, and they start to settle for hard mid-range shots and hard three-point shots. He's just such a big impact when he is on the court that he can make offensive players shy away from the basket. He was also a first-time All-Star this year, and he will be on an all-defensive team again this year. Now, moving on to the only award anyone cares about, the Most Valuable Player award. Now, for the MVP, I did have to go with Joel Embiid, as he is averaging 33.1 points per game, which is the best of his career, and he is also wrapping up his 2nd straight scoring title. He also had a career high in points this season with 59 points against the Utah Jazz in November. That was one of his best games of his career, as he had a stat line of 59 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, and he also had a career high in blocks that night with 7. Joel is also averaging 10 rebounds with 4 assists on 54% shooting and 85% from the free throw line. He also has the 76ers sitting atop the Eastern Conference once again. Now, this is no knock on the back-to-back MVP in Nikola Jokic. As we all know, he is great. I mean, he's basically averaging a triple-double, with 24.5 points, 11.8 rebounds, and 9.8 assists per game. 9.8 assists per game. He was 0.2 assists away from averaging a triple-double this season. Like I said, near triple-double. He also has the Nuggets as the first seed, but towards the end of the season, the Denver Nuggets started to look not so great. They found it more difficult to win games. You could say they weren't really trying, and they had locked up the first seed and are just ready for the playoffs, but still, the last half of the season for the Nuggets is still very concerning. Joel is also leading Jokic in some advanced stats like win shares. Joel has 8.5 win shares compared to Nikola Jokic 7.6. However, Jokic does lead with player efficiency rating at 28.5, but Joel Embiid is not far behind at 27.9. It was a tough decision, especially when you consider Giannis and how the Bucks have just completely dominated the season. But at the end of the day, my heart was with Joel Embiid, and I feel like he has had the best year of his career. And he is also very well deserving. In that 52-point game he had with like a week left to go in the season, just really put the stamp on it for me. And that is why I have Joel Embiid as my MVP. But let me know what you guys think, and if you think anyone else should have won one of these awards.